Hey everyone, this is Finity with Reality Skewed Gamers coming at you with something that was actually asked by a lot of people, which was surprising to me. The last tutorial I did about a raid was with the Rancor raid, and because of real life kind of hitting me really quickly, there was a little bit of a gap between when I made another video, and I've been getting people asking me about if I'm making any other videos regarding AAT, and now that the Reality Skewed Gamers Guild is hitting heroic AAT and we're starting to down it a little bit, I feel a little bit more comfortable about making a video about some of the different attacks. I always want to make sure that whatever information I give you is going to be definitely the most accurate and actually provides help. So I want to make sure I'm speaking from a position where I'm actually getting some kind of success here. Um, so coming from a free-to-play player perspective, there's obviously going to be some differences between what you are doing and what a whale is going to be doing. And so this is coming more from a free-to-play perspective in terms of how to set up your roster and what's going to be expected of you, how to get that 2% that I know everybody is trying to get. That 2% is really important because if your entire guild of 50 is able to do the 2%, that means that everybody would be doing 100% in the actual raid itself, and you'll be able to clear all the phases. The one that I'm talking about today, though, is going to be Phase 3, which is going to be the Heroic Rancor with the B2 Rocket Trooper. And it's going to be based around the Chirpatine attack. I'll go through some of the variations as we go along, and I may make another video about the different variations, for example, a T-Botine. But what I'm going to go through is kind of the concepts behind the Chirpatine, how it can be adapted for your roster, and why the different ones work the way they do. And then show you my attack that I recorded in our last AAT, and show you kind of the steps that I took during that process. Okay, so let's start with the basics of Chirpatine and why it actually works. So let's look at Chirpa first. The key thing that makes Chirpa important is his leader ability. Now, with his leader ability, all you need is level 72, and you'll need gear level 8. As a result of getting those two things, you will be able to unlock his maximum lead ability. Now, this is fairly important because his lead ability does not have an Omega, which means you don't necessarily need to get him to level 80, although it is a good idea to get him to level 85 if you're putting him in the AAT raid. But at a minimum, you need a level 72 in order to unlock his maximum lead ability. So what makes his lead ability so important? So his lead ability, Simple Tactics, gives Ewoks 20% turn meter, deals 10% more damage whenever they perform a basic attack. These effects are halved for other allies. Now, by the name of Chirpatine, you know this is a combination mainly between Chirpa and Emperor Palpatine. Emperor Palpatine is definitely not an Ewok. And so the effects that Emperor Palpatine is going to get is going to be half of these, meaning that he's going to get 10% turn meter and deal 5% more damage with his basic attack. So what's the aspect of Emperor Palpatine that ends up being important in this Chirpatine attack? With Emperor Palpatine, it's actually his basic attack. So with his basic attack, he deals special damage to target enemy and shocks them for 3 turns. And then Palpatine gains 15% turn meter for each shocked enemy. Now that's going to be the key when you're looking at Phase 3 and trying to figure out how to do your strategy. So let's start looking at the actual gameplay. So you see that during the phase, you will have a B2 Rocket Trooper, who's going to be the main guy that's going to be taking damage. You have that AAT in the back that's going to fill up turn meter and then basically fire a massive damage shot, unless you guys have a buff up on your characters. And then you have 6 of the little droids. Now, the 2 on the right are going to be the commanders, the 4 on the left, I guess 3 on the left and 1 on the left in the right section, is going to be kind of just the mini droids. They do some damage, but what you're going to be concerned about, though, is looking at Emperor Palpatine. Because the B2 droid is going to be immune to shock, his adds, though, the other commander droids and the other B1s, are not immune to shock. So what you'll see happen is that you'll shock one droid, and you'll get the 15% turn meter every time that Emperor Palpatine uses his basic. because that will be a shocked enemy. Then you'll get the second one, who will then give another 15% to Emperor Palpatine. Then you get the third, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth. So now you have 6 of the little droids that are getting the damage, or that are shocked, while Emperor Palpatine is using his basic, and every time he uses his basic, he's going to end up getting all of this turn meter. So how much turn meter does that equate to? If you have 6 targets that are each giving Emperor Palpatine 15% turn meter, Emperor Palpatine is then going to end up with 90% turn meter once all 6 of those little droids are shocked. Add that to the Chirpa lead ability. So let's go back to the Chirpa ability here. When you look at the Chirpa ability, because Emperor Palpatine is not an Ewok, he is going to get half, meaning that he's going to get 10% turn meter due to Chirpa's lead ability every time he performs a basic attack. And a basic attack is what you need in order to get the turn meter from the shock. So Emperor Palpatine now, every single time he uses his basic attack and these 6 droids are going to be shocked, is going to get 90% turn meter from the shock, 10% turn meter from Chirpa, and now you have 100% turn meter coming to Emperor Palpatine. So the question you may be asking yourself then is, Emperor Palpatine is getting 100% turn meter. How is he not getting infinite damage? How is he just going non-stop? That is because of the B2 Battle Droid. Now, the B2 Battle Droid is going to be fairly interesting here because, let me bring that up here. There we go. So, the B2 Battle Droid is going to be pretty interesting because of the fact that if you look at his ability called Enrage All Threats, so he has a 35% counter chance and gains 25% turn meter whenever he counters. Okay, so every time Emperor Palpatine uses his attack on B2, there's a 35% chance that the B2 Battle Droid is going to counterattack and then also gain 25% turn meter. So that is how you do not get infinite attack with Emperor Palpatine. Because Emperor Palpatine is going to keep on getting turn meter, or his 100% turn meter, but for every attack, not only is he getting the 5% turn meter whenever he takes damage from Fearsome Foe 1, but he has a chance to gain 25% turn meter as well. And once he gains that 25% turn meter, that's a big chunk of turn meter. You keep on getting the 5% damage over and over again every time Emperor Palpatine uses his shock. And that's how a B2 Battle Droid ends up going, even though Emperor Palpatine is gaining 100% turn meter. So, when you're now thinking about how to run your Phase 3 attack with Chirpa, okay, going back to the initial setup here, you'll see that the squad that you want to have is Chirpa lead with Emperor Palpatine, and then 3 taunting tanks. And the reason for the taunting tanks is because of the counterattack. You want one of the tanks to be taunting so that if Emperor Palpatine triggers a counterattack, the B2 Battle Droid, or the Rocket Trooper I should say, is going to be attacking one of the taunting tanks, and Emperor Palpatine can definitely still survive. You don't want all of the counterattacks going to Emperor Palpatine because Emperor Palpatine is relatively squishy and he is going to die. 2 of the tanks that I would really recommend you using in this phase are going to be Stormtrooper Han and Royal Guard. Stormtrooper Han because you can use his taunt early, and every time he gets attacked, he'll gain turn meter for the entire squad, and that means Emperor Palpatine is going to go a little bit faster to get all 6 of those shocks up. One of the things you'll have to make sure is that you get those 6 shocks up on those B1 droids relatively quickly so you can start wailing away on the B2 Rocket Trooper. And I'll show you that coming up. So Stormtrooper Han is definitely going to be one that you'll want to work on. And the other one is Royal Guard. Now Royal Guard is important because he taunts out of turn. So if, for example, let's say that Stormtrooper Han is dead and nobody is taunting and Emperor Palpatine starts to attack B2 Rocket Trooper, B2 Rocket Trooper is going to attack Emperor Palpatine, and Emperor Palpatine is going to start taking damage. As soon as he goes below half health, though, Royal Guard is going to taunt. Even if, for example, Stormtrooper Han is taunting and Stormtrooper Han goes below 50%, Royal Guard is going to taunt so that if Stormtrooper Han dies, then Royal Guard is ready to take over. And so Royal Guard plus Stormtrooper Han is a really good combination in this phase. As for the third tank, I'm using Sunfac right now, but you can use whatever other taunting tank you want. I've seen people doing it with Scarif Rebel Pathfinder. I've seen them doing it with Gamorrean Guard. Whatever it is that you have there, use as a third taunting tank. Just make sure it's a taunter, because you really need that taunt in order to make sure Emperor Palpatine doesn't take the damage. So, now that we've looked at all of that, what are the different RNG things that you have to look at in your Phase 3 to know if you're having a good attack? Now, RNG means random number generator. And so when I say that it's the P3 RNG, it's meaning that you're going to have some random things always being equated, whether or not a character is critting his damage, whether or not something is evaded. So that's all taken into in the terms of RNG, which is the back-end calculation of how some of these functions go on. So when you are doing your attack, some of the things you want to look for are, first, when Chirpa uses his tribal unity, which is when he gets all Ewoks plus one other ally to attack a target, you want to try and get Emperor Palpatine to be called with the tribal unity. This is so Emperor Palpatine can apply a shock out of turn, and so there's already one shock that you can add during Chirpa's turn, and then Emperor Palpatine can add a second right off the bat. So you can get two of the droids shocked right at the beginning. This strategy, however, will not work in normal AAT, for those of you worried about that, because the tribal unity will kill the B1 battle droids. So if you tried this in normal AAT, and you tried the tribal unity, you'll see that the B1 battle droids don't have a lot of hit points, they die. In heroic AAT, those battle droids have a lot more hit points, so you can do the tribal unity, and the combination of Chirpa with Emperor Palpatine does not kill them, and so you can actually apply the shock. The next one is going to be Emperor Palpatine does not get resisted. Now, when I show you my Emperor Palpatine, you'll understand why this is going to be important. As a quick summary, Emperor Palpatine is not in the lead position, and I also do not have much potency on him. And I'll explain why when I get there. The next thing is you want to make sure that none of your characters, before Emperor Palpatine kind of gets his 6 shocks up and kind of gets into that 100% turn meter groove, you want to make sure that no character really takes any major critical damage. Some might take crit damage. You can, if you really have the time, go until none of them take any critical damage and it's all just basic. That could require a lot of restarts. The main thing you want to avoid, though, is Emperor Palpatine not taking any critical damage. Possibly not taking any damage at all, but at a minimum, don't let him take any critical damage. The next thing is, again, going back to that, a non-tank taking significant damage. You want to make sure that Emperor Palpatine and Chirpa don't take a lot of damage. Now, Chirpa may not have a lot of hit points to begin with. Again, you really only need Chirpa with his lead ability maxed out in order to make this group effective and get your 2%. But if you are planning on using Chirpa some more, trying to get some more of that tribal unity going during the fight, you'll be gaining turn meter with Stormtrooper Han, all kinds of things. You want to try and make sure that your Chirpa and definitely your Emperor Palpatine don't take a lot of damage so that they actually can survive for longer during the match. And then the last one is going to be the counterattacks. Remember that B2 Rocket Trooper has a 35% chance of countering. If you start doing the match and you find that the Rocket Trooper is maybe counterattacking your first 5 attacks and all of a sudden your tanks are taking a lot of damage, maybe that's a good time to reconsider restarting. When you're doing your fight, though, always make sure you know what your starting percentage is so you know whether or not you're hitting that 2% that you really need in order to help your guild complete your heroic AAT raid. So, now that we've discussed that a little bit, let's go ahead and take a look at my roster. So I have Chirpa open here. And this is actually the Chirpa that I use when I do my raid. Now, I know I can get much better mods. Again, this is a free-to-play kind of strategy. Everyone's going to have different level mods. Sometimes you don't really need to kind of change your mods around on all your squads from your PvP squad, which may have high speed secondaries, and throw them on your main squad. You really have to kind of make sure, because the free-to-play might be limited in credits and how you're spending it, and there's a lot of places to spend credits if you're moving around mods during your AAT raid, you really kind of want to make sure you're conservative and not really wasting things. So, with my Chirpa, what I've done is put 4 speed mods, mainly just to get him speed up so he can use his tribal unity, and I can kind of get all of that extra shock potential with him. Overall, my mods, you can see that with I do have the speed primary. I do want to make sure I have that. I have 4 of the speed set mods, but they're all either Mark 1 or Mark 2 level. I have just a 5 mark health mod just to kind of get Chirpa a little bit more protection and get him survival up. And again, same thing with his plus sign. It's a Mark 2 health mod. Currently, I am working on improving my mods on these characters, and so Chirpa may be a little bit farther down the line because the only thing I really cared about with him was getting that lead ability maxed out. The next one I'm going to look at is Emperor Palpatine. Now, Emperor Palpatine is the one that I told you during the RNG, you want to make sure he doesn't get resisted. Now, if you look at the mods that I have for Emperor Palpatine, I have 4 offense mods and 2 crit chance mods. Now, my offense mods, I don't have the first order right now to do the mod challenges, so I'm planning on buying more of the offense up mods through the mod shipments in order to upgrade these. But why you want offense up is because Emperor Palpatine is going to be using his basic attack. And you want to make sure that you maximize the damage. You really don't need potency because you have the convenience of RNG runs and retreating and trying again. You don't really need to have a crazy amount of potency on Emperor Palpatine because if you get resisted and you don't apply the 6 shocks right off the bat, you can just restart. This isn't the same as Arena, so make sure that you kind of keep that in mind. The way that you would mod a character for something like an AAT raid is going to be considerably different than an Arena, because if you miss a shock or the stun with Emperor Palpatine due to being resisted in Arena, your whole match can get potentially screwed. However, in Heroic AAT, you just retreat and you start over again. So, when I was talking about the RNG runs and making sure Emperor Palpatine doesn't get resisted, make sure you focus on the damage of Emperor Palpatine, and then just use the retreat function, not the escape, but the retreat function, in order to get Emperor Palpatine, lay those 6 shocks on the characters with RNG, rather than having to focus a lot on the mods. Focus your mods with Emperor Palpatine more towards the damage. So, I have 4 damage mods. You'll see that this one, I don't yet have the speed one. Again, the speed isn't necessary with Emperor Palpatine because he's going to keep gaining 100% turn meter. So I have the offense arrow on Emperor Palpatine. So once you have 4 offense up mods, there's 2 that are going to be left over, and the best set of 2 that ends up maximizing your damage is going to be your crit chance. So I have 2 crit chance giving that set bonus, and then I have 4 offense up giving that set bonus. And so you can look overall at his mods, and he's going to be special offense. So his special damage is around 4,800. He has special crit chance of about 28%, 29%. You can try for more crit chance. I've experimented with it a lot, and I found that just going with the straight offense was actually a little bit better than going with crit chance, because it just seemed to work out better for me. So that's what I went with. If you want to try all crit chance, go ahead. Unless your crit chance is over 40%, crit damage is not going to be worth it. And if you're using 4 crit damage mod sets, you're more likely than not going to not be over 40% crit chance. So if you're below 40% crit chance, either go with offense or actual crit chance, but offense should give you more damage. And if you're over 40%, which is probably going to be unlikely, but if you're over 40%, you can try crit damage mod sets as well. Now, the other ones are going to be my tanks. Now, so with my tanks, the first one I have is Royal Guard. He's pretty much just beefed up with health and protection. He doesn't really need speed because he can taunt out of turn. So for him, it's going to be all about survival. Stormtrooper Han does want speed because you want to get that taunt with that turn meter gain relatively early. His mods are a little bit of a hodgepodge, but that's mainly because all of them have high speed secondaries, and he's currently a character that I'm using on my PvP squad, so he definitely always has high speed mods on him. So with Stormtrooper Han, you want to try and work on survivability as well as speed. And same thing with Sunfac. Sunfac is actually probably better being a little bit slower. You don't need the taunt right off the bat with Sunfac because Stormtrooper Han will be taunting. And you can use the taunt with Sunfac later on. So you'll see that I focused a lot on protection and health on Sunfac, and he has 52 or 54,000 protection and almost 29,000 health. So Sunfac is pretty tanky, and that's all I really need from him. He just needs to be able to absorb that damage. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and start showing you guys my video that I recorded. I'll kind of comment on it as we go along. You'll see that I restart a lot. And I found some little things that may be a little bit more superstitious than actual. But as we go through this, you'll see some of the different things that I do. And I'll tell you guys right now, it does take a little bit of time to start getting my actual run going. You'll see that I restart a lot here. So watching this run, you'll see that I get everything kind of running off the bat. Nothing major is going on. Stormtrooper Han took some damage. Royal Guard is taking a little bit. Then I have Stormtrooper Han doing a taunt. And right there, so I'm pausing it here for a second. Right there you saw that Tribal Unity was used by Chirpa. And instead of Emperor Palpatine getting called, Royal Guard got called. So, what's the next thing I do? Retreat. Do not be afraid to retreat. Okay, one of the biggest mistakes that you can make, especially as a free-to-play, is going to be just going with your first run. If you're in a primarily free-to-play guild, every little bit of damage counts. So don't just sacrifice the damage just in order to kind of speed up your run here. So, everything is kind of going again. And I have Royal Guard going. He puts defense up to try and reduce some of the damage going on. Stormtrooper Han taunts. And Tribal Unity called Stormtrooper Han, so I retreat again. Okay? Again, there are a few retreats going on here, but you'll kind of see some of the strategies that I have going on. And I'll kind of start speeding it up a little bit here in a little bit, but do one more time. Damage is distributed relatively well. Emperor Palpatine, for the most part, has been spared. Got one attack. Go with defense up. Taunt with Stormtrooper Han. And Tribal Unity called Royal Guard again. So, this is not going very well at the beginning. Again, you just keep on retreating. Now, what you see me doing now is trying to figure out the best place for Emperor Palpatine. So, I switched Sunfac with Emperor Palpatine in their positions. Same squad, different positions, just to see if maybe the RNG luck will change a little bit. And so, again, you start the squads again. The particular reason I did it this particular way was because Sunfac really wasn't taking much of the initial damage. And so I wanted to see whether or not Emperor Palpatine would get attacked. That run, he did not get attacked, but Royal Guard was called. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second. In the last, I think, 5 attacks that I've shown you, Royal Guard has been called 3 times. I don't know if this is necessarily the way that it just works with Chirpa, but because that position was called, I switched Emperor Palpatine into that position. And so, if you look at the squad now, Emperor Palpatine is sitting all the way on the left, which is where Royal Guard was, and that was a position that seemed to be getting called the most with Tribal Unity. So maybe it's a little bit superstitious, maybe it was just bad luck with RNG, it wasn't a huge sample set, but I figured, you know what, may as well try it, see if I can get a change in luck, and look at that, Royal Guard gets called again. So, just my luck, maybe it's something with Royal Guard and Chirpa, but I figured, you know what, let's just continue with this. Maybe it's a Royal Guard thing, maybe it's a position thing, keep on trying, okay? Remember that it is about RNG, finding that run to kind of get you going. Okay, so we start off again. Very familiar scenario that you guys should be used to seeing now. Start off with defense up, start protecting some of those people that are taking damage. Emperor Palpatine took a little bit of a hit there, but nothing major. And we have Emperor Palpatine going. So now I have Emperor Palpatine going. He goes for the second. I have 2 shocks up. He gained 30% turn meter plus 10 from Chirpa. So right there, 40% turn meter. Okay, you still have Stormtrooper Han taunting, so the only damage that's being taken right now is from the AoE. Emperor Palpatine now has his 3rd shock up. Now, one of the things you'll notice is a lot of times when these droids are up, I go ahead and attack the B2 rocket trooper with my attackers. So whether it was Sunfac a little while ago or about to be Chirpa, I attack the B2 rocket trooper rather than some of the other little droids. The main reason is that if, for example, B2 rocket trooper ends up counterattacking, he's going to attack Stormtrooper Han, who's my only taunter. When you attack Stormtrooper Han when he's taunting, he gives everybody turn meter, which then, once again, speeds up Emperor Palpatine. So again, the goal in the initial phase is to try and get those 6 shocks up as soon as you can. And so no counterattack this time, but that's just more damage on B2. This time he does counterattack, and so Emperor Palpatine is pretty much at full turn meter. Royal Guard is getting ready to go here. But so instead, because Emperor Palpatine is pretty much full, I tried to stun one of the other droids, and it didn't work. So Emperor Palpatine now got his 4th shock up, getting turn meter from Stormtrooper Han getting attacked, and boom, now we have the 5th shock. So we are 1 shock away from getting this party rolling. Now, in that particular case, I did not attack the B2 rocket trooper with Royal Guard. The reason for that was that even though it's a little bit hidden behind the buffs, that rocket troop, that B1 battle droid that I attacked was getting close to full turn meter. So he was probably going to be attacking soon, so I wanted to try and stun him. But also, Stormtrooper Han has lost his protection and is at maybe about 75% health. So I didn't want to necessarily trigger more damage on Stormtrooper Han at this particular point, especially with the minimal damage that Royal Guard actually provides. And so because of that, I tried to attack one of the B1 droids. The stun failed, but it still kind of keeps everything going. Now, I put, again, Stormtrooper Han was low on health, so I go ahead and activated Chirpa's ability, try to give Stormtrooper Han some health over time. Because I know that target was about to attack, and getting turn meter for Emperor Palpatine really wasn't going to help in this particular case, Sunfac did not attack B2, and instead used his offense down on that droid that was about to attack. And now, so what you saw there was a resist with the Emperor Palpatine shock. Now, this may have been an occasion for me to basically restart. However, when I saw what happened next, there really wasn't much of a reason to. So, Emperor Palpatine did not gain 100% turn meter because he didn't have 6 shocked. He had 5 shocked plus the 10% from Chirpa. But you saw that B2 then attacked Stormtrooper Han, which gave Emperor Palpatine full turn meter. So it was almost as if Emperor Palpatine gained full turn meter. Because of that particular sequence of events, I did not restart. However, if Emperor Palpatine didn't go and other droids went in between and more damage was caused, it would have been a situation for me to restart. So Emperor Palpatine goes again. Now I have 6 shocks up. And now Emperor Palpatine just starts to wail away. Okay, so I lost Stormtrooper Han. He took a lot of damage, obviously, in the early phases. Depending on what your squad is and how strong of a tank Stormtrooper Han is, you may want to restart this in particular. However, you saw my Sunfac, my Royal Guard. They're pretty beefy. They can take a lot of damage. So I'm not necessarily worried about them taking damage and kind of keeping my Emperor Palpatine up. So I have Emperor Palpatine just kind of wailing away at this point. And I have a good stretch here where I didn't get a counterattack, and then the B2 Rocket Trooper attacked again. So I had a good stretch there. It looked like RNG was going in a good direction for me. And now I can go ahead and start again. Now, while this is going on, take a look at the AAT tank in the back. You see how its turn meter is getting close to full, but it's not really increasing any. So the only characters that are really gaining turn meter right now during this phase are going to be Emperor Palpatine from his shop, B2 Rocket Trooper because of his counter ability plus Fearsome Foe, and Royal Guard whenever B2 Rocket Trooper attacks a different target, because Royal Guard has his passive ability where he gains turn meter whenever another target besides him is attacked. And at this point, I'm well over my 2%. All of this is basically just extra damage. And if you're noticing, every time he uses his shock, it looks like all the other little droids are taking damage. So that's the other thing if you didn't fully read all of the abilities. Emperor Palpatine has a passive ability that will deal damage to any target that he has shocked. And so, but that damage is not enough to kill them. It's never going to be a killing damage blow. So it'll reduce them down to about 1 hit point. And so all of those B2 droids are at 1 hit point, and that's pretty much it. They're just sitting at 1 hit point repeatedly. That means Emperor Palpatine doesn't lose his shocks. So those 6 shocks stay up, giving him that 90% turn meter. You get the 10% again from Chirpa, so it's just constant 100% turn meter gain. Now, when you're coming down to this particular time, and everybody will eventually reach this kind of phase where your Emperor Palpatine is going to be low on health just from taking all the AoE damage, and you're trying to figure out how to attack. You have the 6 little droids still there. You have the ability for Emperor Palpatine to gain health if you use that last ability on the right. How do you manage it? So what you want to make sure that you're watching is B2 Rocket Trooper's turn meter, so that if he counterattacks and gains 25% turn meter, you want to make sure that Emperor Palpatine at least still has 1 attack before B2 Rocket Trooper goes. And the other thing is you want to make sure you look at his cooldowns up in the upper right and see if his AoE ability is on cooldown or not. Because if his AoE ability is on cooldown, Emperor Palpatine can survive a little bit longer. But in this scenario, B2 Rocket Trooper ends up using his AoE, Emperor Palpatine is going to die. So, as it's approaching the end here, you'll see that the B2 Rocket Trooper is kind of getting close on turn meter. Emperor Palpatine has 100%, but his AoE ability was on cooldown, so I kept on going with Emperor Palpatine. But now I have no tank. So now I have to be a little bit more cautious in terms of how I'm going to attack this. There's really no reason for a huge risk at this point. I have all of these droids, and so I decided, you know what? There's not really much health to be gained. That tank in the back is about to go anyways. Even if I gain the health, that it's going to gain the turn meter like you saw and basically wipe out my squad. And so, let me bring it back here just to kind of show you. So, that was my final result. And you'll see, again, look at my my different gear levels. So my Sun Fac was a gear level 10, although I think or gear level 9. I think the one that I showed you was gear level 10 because I just managed to upgrade him. So the difference wasn't too much, though, in terms of the stats. But my Sun Fac was gear 9. My Stormtrooper Han was gear 11. My Royal Guard was gear 10. And Emperor Palpatine was gear 10. And Chirpa was gear 8. So this isn't a fully maxed out squad. And even with that, I managed to do over 500,000, which is close to about 4.5%. So this is how you utilize your Chirpatine attack. There's a lot of little things you want to make sure you look out for. I'm going to bring up the RNG page again. So again, make sure when you're using your attacks, and if you don't have a super maxed out squad, it's going to require a little bit more finesse than brute force. So make sure that you're looking to see whether or not Emperor Palpatine was called with tribal unity by Chirpa. Make sure you check to see whether or not Emperor Palpatine's shocks were getting resisted. Okay, that's probably going to be the main one. If Emperor Palpatine gets resisted and you're focusing, like I had mentioned, on just offensive mods, meaning a lot of offense mods, crit chance, whatever it is, you're not going to have a lot of potency, meaning you really need to make sure you focus on the shock RNG and getting those shots up without being resisted, especially in the early ones. So you want at least 5. Hopefully you get all 6 without being resisted, and then you can just roll away with your Emperor Palpatine's 100% turn meter gain. Any major critical damage, so you don't want any huge damage necessarily taking out anybody early. You want to try and get as much of that damage focused on the tanks rather than Chirpa and Emperor Palpatine. And you want to also make sure you monitor the number of counterattacks. So if B2 Battle Droid is, or Rocket Trooper is doing counterattacks on every attack for your first 5 attacks, it might be time for a restart. If he doesn't counterattack for the first 10, that might be a really good attack. So make sure that you're looking at the counter abilities. Now, going back again, I'll mention this briefly, and hopefully I'll try and make another video about it. When you look at the B2 Rocket Trooper's ability, he has the 35% counter chance. That's where Chirpatine ends up being useful. So if you don't have Chirpa, but you have Tibo, the idea is that you put Tibo as lead in order to give Emperor Palpatine the stealth so he doesn't trigger this counter chance. And so even though Emperor Palpatine is only going to be gaining 90% turn meter instead of 100, you're going to be hopefully stealth for some of those counter abilities and not give B2 the Rocket Trooper the 25% turn meter extra when he takes damage. If you use Chirpatine though, remember Emperor Palpatine is not going to be getting the 100% turn meter, so speed plays a much more critical factor than in a Chirpatine attack. Okay, so just because in Chirpatine you might focus more on Emperor Palpatine, there is a big difference between 90% turn meter gain and 100% turn meter gain. And so if you are using Chirpatine, you want to make sure that you think a little bit more about speed with regards to Emperor Palpatine than just pure offense like a Chirpatine. So if you guys have any questions, please make sure that you post comments in the video link. And let me know if you guys use a different strategy. This is what I found works best for me, and it seems pretty simple for a free-to-play player, and so that's the reason why I use it. But if you guys have other methods that you use, please go ahead and post them in the comments. If you guys have any questions about anything that I've done here, please let me know. And otherwise, please give a thumbs up if you like this kind of video. I got some messages about it, so I figured I'd make another one. Has a little bit of math, which for some reason people actually like. So I'll try and do a little bit more math. I think it's because they don't have to do it and I do it for them. So I have no problem doing more of that. Please subscribe to our channel. I'll try to get some more videos like this out there for some of the heroic AAT raids. And I hope you all have a great day.